The instant you form the words to clarify your position, you have already surrendered the higher ground. Visualize the scene. An insinuation is made across a crowded table. Your judgment is questioned in a room of colleagues. Someone close to you artfully contorts your meaning. You feel that flush of heat. The defensive chemicals surge. Your mind races with the urgency to set the record straight, to correct the narrative, to prove your case. So you begin to speak. You clarify. You justify. You offer your evidence. And in that precise moment, you have voluntarily handed over the reins of the interaction. You have submitted to a trial you never agreed to. The social world rarely evaluates you on the factual accuracy of your statements. It assesses you on the intensity of your need to be heard. The individual who explains is, by the nature of the act, the one who has accepted a subordinate position. The one who mounts a defense has implicitly acknowledged the other party's presumed authority to sit in judgment. Historical thinkers who studied the nature of influence understood a raw principle that contemporary culture often discourages. They recognized that true authority is seldom about factual correctness. It is about who controls the context of the discussion. And the second you begin to defend your position, you have entered their context. You have taken the seat of the accused in a courtroom they erected. But consider an alternative path. What if, when the provocation arrives, you executed the single maneuver that unsettles a person seeking leverage more than any counterargument? Most individuals navigate their social lives as reactive entities. Their emotional state is tugged by the strings of external validation. A look of disapproval prompts an apology. A baseless accusation triggers a frantic explanation. They exist in a perpetual cycle of response, striving to demonstrate their goodness, their intelligence, their worth. It is an exhausting way to live. It is a gradual diminishment of one's own center. Yet there exists a different mode of being, a way of moving through interpersonal space that is so composed, so self-contained, and so psychologically resilient that criticisms do not merely deflect. They lose their cohesion before they can even make contact. This is not about coldness or arrogance. It is about a fundamental recalibration of where you source your sense of reality. Our discussion today will dissect the underlying mechanisms of the non-reaction. We will explore why your innate biology works against you in these charged moments, and how to consciously override it with a framework that masters of strategy would have recognized. I will outline how to invert a power dynamic in a heartbeat, how to lead an aggressor to question their own footing, how to employ silence not as a mere absence of sound, but as a tool that can dismantle another's attempted dominance. A word of caution: this requires you to relinquish a part of yourself that you have likely nurtured since your earliest years. The part that pleads to be understood. The part that seeks external permission. If you can dissolve that need, you transform into something formidable. You become remarkably difficult to manipulate. Let's start at the foundation. Why is the compulsion to explain so deeply ingrained? Trace it to its origin. Recall being a child, facing a parent or teacher over some alleged misdeed. What was the primary pathway to avoid consequence? Explanation: I didn't take it. It wasn't my fault. You learned that figures of authority held the gavel. You learned that your safety and approval depended on convincing that authority of your innocence. The issue is that you physically matured, but that psychological reflex often remained intact. You now move through the world, unconsciously projecting that authority onto a vast array of people: your employer, your partner, acquaintances, even adversaries. When you defend yourself to someone, you are, at a subconscious level, communicating. You are the judge. I am the petitioner. Please validate my plea so I can feel secure. It broadcasts a signal of uncertainty. And people, on an instinctual level, can detect that scent of submission from a considerable distance. A translated insight for modern dynamics might be: it is often more stabilizing to be respected than to be exhaustively understood. When you rush to defend, you are prioritizing being understood over maintaining a position of respect. You are effectively saying, please see my intentions. Please affirm my narrative. But consider, a sovereign does not explain his decrees to gain consensus. A force of nature does not justify its actions. The moment you begin detailing, rationalizing, producing receipts, or dredging up history to prove a point, you have signaled that your internal equilibrium is contingent upon their agreement. You have given them a key to your emotional state. And once they possess that key, They may be tempted to test the lock whenever they wish. This is the trap of the externally validated self. You operate under the belief that if you can just articulate your position with enough clarity, the other person will have an epiphany. Oh, now I comprehend. You are correct. I was mistaken. How frequently does this outcome actually occur? Virtually never. Because the initial provocation was rarely about factual discrepancy. It was about testing for leverage. They did not accuse you because they sought truth. They accused you to observe if you would flinch. And by defending, you flinched. The initial step toward becoming unshakable is to internalize a critical realization. That courtroom is an illusion. There is no impartial judge. There is no jury of your peers. There is only you and your chosen perception of reality. When you cease to treat others as adjudicators, their accusations cease to sound like verdicts. They begin to sound like passing weather, opinions, data points, noise. And you can choose whether to let that weather system pass through you or to build a home within its storm. So, what is the practical application? What happens when you consciously choose not to flinch? Envision the moment. A verbal dart is thrown your way. You're being incredibly selfish right now. The conditioned, reactive version of you might immediately respond. No, I'm not. What about when I did this for you? I'm just stressed because. This is the well-worn path of defensive, reactive justification. Now, visualize the strategic alternative. They say, you're being incredibly selfish right now. You turn your attention to them. You maintain steady, calm eye contact. Your facial expression remains neutral, not hostile, not pleased, simply present. You allow the silence to expand. You let it hang in the space for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Do you know what transpires within that silence? It creates a psychological vacuum. The human mind is deeply unsettled by silence during a potential conflict. It represents a rupture in the expected social script. It signals that you are not participating in the familiar game of charge and defend. When you remain silent, you are reflecting their own aggressive energy back toward them. You are compelling them to sit within the discomfort of the tension they attempted to create. In most cases, they will begin to falter. They will speak again to fill the void they now perceive as threatening. I mean, it's not always, but just in this instance. Or, why are you just looking at me like that? They have begun defending themselves against your silence. The dynamic has pivoted. This is the principle of becoming a reflective surface. You cannot attack a void. You cannot strike a fog. By refusing to provide the solid resistance of a defensive argument, you cause their aggressive thrust to pass through empty space, leaving them off balance. This demands significant internal discipline, because internally, your ego may be clamoring. Retaliate. Offer a witty retort. You must not let this stand. You must leash that impulse. Strategic thinkers through history understood that the most influential person in any room is often the one whose reactions are least legible. If you defend, you reveal your vulnerabilities. You reveal what you value enough to protect. You reveal your emotional triggers. I'm not stupid now informs them your insecurity relates to perceived intelligence. I'm not a bad person reveals you are sensitive about your moral character. Silence discloses nothing. It is a blank canvas. When they look at it, they see only their own aggression reflected back, and that reflection often makes them uneasy. There will be situations where silence alone may not fit the context. Sometimes, words are necessary, but they need not be defensive words. If you must speak, the key is to avoid pushing directly against the force coming at you. Instead, you redirect it. You utilize the conversational equivalent of a martial art that uses an opponent's momentum. There exists a concept in social strategy sometimes called agree and amplify. It generates a state of cognitive dissonance in the person attempting to provoke you. If someone levels an absurd accusation at you, defending against it actually validates the accusation's potential seriousness. It suggests the claim is worthy of a rebuttal. The alternative is to lean into the accusation. You exaggerate it until it becomes an obvious parody. For example, provocation, you are so obsessed with money. You're just greedy. The defensive reaction, I am not greedy. I'm just trying to be responsible and provide for my family. This is predictable and enters their frame. The strategic response, sad face with a flat or mildly amused demeanor. You've uncovered my secret. I actually swim in a vault of gold coins every Tuesday. It's a nightmare on my posture. What have you accomplished here? You have refused to accept the role of the insulted. You have demonstrated you carry no insecurity about the topic. You have transformed their serious attack into a piece of theater. You have established that you are the one controlling the tone and framing of the interaction. This disarms the aggressor. They sought to wound you. Instead, you took their intended weapon and used it to playfully peel a piece of fruit. This signals a state of amused mastery. Amused mastery is a pinnacle of social confidence. It is the demeanor of an adult observing a child's tantrum. The adult does not become angry. The adult does not argue on the child's terms. The adult is amused by the display because they know they are not truly threatened. When you defend yourself heatedly, you are getting on the floor and screaming alongside the child. The powerful choice is to remain standing, observe, and perhaps allow a slight, knowing smile. This is not about cruelty. It is about maintaining your own center of gravity. In his exploration of influence, author Robert Greene discusses the law of recreating yourself. A component of this is refusing the identities that others attempt to assign to you. When someone slaps a label on you, they are trying to confine you to a box. If you struggle against the box, you are still granting the box your full attention. If you laugh at the very idea of the box, you dissolve its power. You're so arrogant. I prefer the term securely self-aware, but I appreciate your feedback. You never think about anyone but yourself. I'm working on my empathy focus. I'll slot you into my practice schedule for next quarter. This approach is potent because it demonstrates wholeness. You do not require their validation to confirm your own self-knowledge. A person who is confident in their generosity can chuckle when called stingy. A person who knows their own capability can smile when called incompetent. If you find yourself defending vehemently, it often indicates a deep-seated fear that there might be a fragment of truth in the accusation. This is the internal work that must underpin any external technique. Let's delve into the deeper structure of interaction. Every exchange possesses a meta-conversation, a hidden architecture of roles. In a conflict, the roles are typically interrogator and defendant. The interrogator poses questions. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? The defendant supplies answers. It is critical to recognize the party asking the questions is often assumed to hold the positional authority. The party who feels compelled to justify is, by the structure, conceding status. A profoundly effective strategic move is to simply decline the role of defendant and, with calm, assume the role of observer. You accomplish this by answering a question with a deeper question or by gently turning the analysis toward the dynamic itself, rather than your own behavior. Example: why are you always late? The defensive you: the traffic was terrible and my phone died so my alarm didn't go off. This accepts the frame of being judged. The strategic you: sad face pausing, then with calm curiosity: what is it about my timing that affects your mood so significantly? Or, is punctuality the primary measure you use for reliability? Observe the shift. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer solely about clock minutes. It is about their emotional response, their criteria for judgment. You have gently redirected the spotlight onto the interaction itself. You are now the observer of the pattern. Follow-up: that's a ridiculous thing to say. The strategic you: what makes a question feel ridiculous to you? Or, you seem to prefer definitive labels. I'm curious about that. You are, in a sense, calmly psychoanalyzing the interaction in real time. This is deeply frustrating to someone whose goal is to provoke a simple, emotional reaction. They want you on the back foot, explaining. Instead, you are walking a calm circle around the interaction, examining it like a fascinating phenomenon. Phrases like these act as shields. It's interesting you perceive it that way. Does stating that make you feel more settled? You seem quite invested in this perspective. These responses acknowledge that words were spoken, but they do not absorb the intended emotional charge. You are establishing a boundary. This is your emotional material, not mine. You retain it. This is more than a technique. It is a philosophical stance. It is the realization that other people's perceptions of you are fundamentally their business, not yours. Their anger is their emotional ecosystem to manage. Their disappointment is their responsibility to process. When you jump to defend, you are attempting to carry their emotional baggage for them. You are trying to adjust their feelings to make yourself more comfortable. The empowered choice is to let them hold their own emotional weight. Now, we arrive at a powerful paradox. Sometimes, the most disarming, power-reclaiming move you can make is to agree. But this is not the agreement of submission or defeat. It is the agreement of the unshakable. Imagine a scenario where someone is escalating. They are listing your faults, attempting to provoke a confrontation. You look at them calmly and say, with steady sincerity, "You're right." And then you stop. No further justification. "You're right. That was inconsiderate of me. You're right that I did not handle that well." This is akin to the fogging technique. If you throw a rock into a thick bank of fog, what is the result? There is no satisfying impact, no rebound. The rock simply disappears into the mist. When you agree with an attacker, you remove the expected resistance. They are pushing against a door, braced for it to be locked. When you open it freely, their momentum carries them forward, off balance. They crave a fight. Resistance validates their emotional state. Agreement neutralizes the conflict energy. The nuance is vital. You agree with the kernel of factual truth or perception without accepting the shame, insult, or overarching identity they are trying to attach to it. There is a vast difference between acknowledging a mistake and endorsing a character assassination. Example: them, "You messed up this report. You're so incompetent." The defensive you: "I am not incompetent. The client gave me the wrong data." You are now fighting the label. The strategic you: "You're right. The report contains errors. I will correct them." You have acknowledged the actionable fact and taken responsibility, while completely ignoring the inflammatory label. This signals profound confidence. Only an individual who is secure in their fundamental competence can acknowledge a specific error with such ease. Insecure individuals often feel compelled to battle every minor point to prove they are not the overarching label. Secure individuals can say, "I made an error here. I'll fix it," and their core self-image remains intact. This is how you disarm an adversary. By laying down the sword of defense, they are left holding their weapon, looking for a battle that no longer exists. It drains the emotional intensity from the situation and positions you as the grounded, solution-oriented party. None of these external approaches will be effective if they are merely hollow tactics. If you use these words while your voice trembles, your eyes flicker with anxiety, or your overall energy pleads, "Please, believe I'm good," the strategy will fail. Social dynamics are 20% verbal content and 80% nonverbal communication and embodied presence. You must cultivate the internal architecture to support the silent, calm exterior. This brings us to the most crucial work, the shadow. Why does a particular accusation cause a reaction in you? Because it lands on, or near, a pre-existing sensitivity. If I told you that you have purple polka-dotted skin, you would likely be bemused, not enraged. You wouldn't feel the need to defend yourself because the claim has no connection to any self-doubt you harbor. You would likely dismiss it or laugh. But if I accuse you of being a failure and you feel a hot surge to defend, it is often because a hidden part of you fears there might be some truth to it. Therefore, the ultimate defense is not a clever verbal technique. It is deep self-knowledge. It is the courageous act of looking into your own shadows, acknowledging your own flaws, capacities, and complexities, and integrating them. When you know and accept that you can, at times, be selfish, and someone calls you selfish, you can calmly respond, "Sometimes, yes, I can be." When you own your capacity for sharpness, and someone calls you cruel, you can nod and say, "I have that capacity." You cannot shame a person who has already fully faced and accepted themselves. You cannot expose someone who has nothing left to hide. This is the essence of being truly untouchable. It means you have integrated the very parts of yourself that others might try to use as weapons. You become transparent. The arrows of criticism pass through because there is no hidden wound for them to lodge in. You are no longer a fortress that requires constant, frantic defense. You are the open sky. So, here is a challenge for you, if you choose to engage with it. For the next 7 days, conduct a personal experiment. The experiment is called no justification. Regardless of the circumstance, whether a minor slight or a significant accusation, you are forbidden from explaining or justifying your actions. If you are late, simply state, "I am late." Do not offer the reason. If you make a mistake, say, "I made a mistake." Do not blame external factors. If someone misunderstands your intentions, allow them to hold their misunderstanding. Sit with the discomfort of that. Feel the powerful, ingrained urge to fix their perception, to manage their emotional state, to be seen as the good one. Let that urge arise and consciously choose to let it burn out without fueling it. Observe what happens in your relationships and interactions. Watch the confusion, then the recalibration, and often the growing respect. You will likely notice a shift because people are instinctively drawn to embodied certainty. And nothing communicates certainty more powerfully than a person who does not feel compelled to explain their every action or thought. You are reclaiming your personal energy. You are sealing the leaks in your psychological boundaries. You are stepping out of the perpetual role of the one seeking permission and into the role of the self-authorizing individual. The world around you will test this new stance. It will bait you with old patterns. It is accustomed to your reaction. Do not supply it. Guard your composure. Maintain your inner stillness. Protect your silence. If this exploration of reclaiming your personal agency resonates with you, consider joining this community of like-minded individuals. Show your support by liking this video. It helps amplify these ideas. Share your thoughts or experiences with this concept in the comments below. Your perspective adds immense value to the discussion for everyone. And if you haven't yet, subscribing ensures you continue to receive content designed to challenge conventional thinking and foster personal sovereignty. Do it not because I ask you to, but because you are committed to moving through the world with greater intention and unshakable composure. Remember, this is a practice. It begins with a single decision in a single moment. The decision not to explain, not to defend, but simply to be unwavering in your own center. From that center, all true power flows. Keep exploring that space. Keep refining your understanding. And as you do, you'll find the need for the old, exhausting dances of defense simply falls away. You have better, more creative, and more powerful ways to engage with the world. Now go and apply this. See what transforms.